So we just broke these up into two inequalities. Since this is a less than, it's an and inequality, which means we're going to shade in the middle. Now we're just going to solve these two. Multiply both sides by 4. And that gives us n is less than or equal to 12. And over here we multiply by what? 4 again. That'll give us n is greater than or equal to negative 12. So let's just graph these. Negative 12, positive 12. Are we going to shade on the outside or in between? Good. Open or close circles? Very good. Closed circles. And since we all read the directions very well, we also need to make sure that we do what? Write our answer in interval notation. So how would I do that here? So it would be negative 12 to 12, right? Any questions? Okay, example number 2, this is an OR inequality, right? So we want to first go ahead and break this up into two inequalities. What's the first one going to be? Negative 9v is greater than 54. And what about the second one? Negative 9v is what? Less than negative 54. Very good. Okay. Where would I go from here? I want to do what to both sides? Very good. Divide both sides by negative 9. That leaves us with v is, uh-oh. Did something just happen? Then it should say is negative 9. We don't change the sign of what's under the inside the absolute value. That doesn't change. So we flip our inequality symbol, and that gives us negative 6. So v is less than negative 6. Or over here we divide both sides by negative 9, and what happens to our inequality symbol? It switches or flips, and it becomes v is greater than 6. And no, they won't always be opposites. This is just because we're doing these easy problems, but they won't always be opposites, okay? So negative 6 and 6. Are we shading on the outside or in between? Outside, okay? Open or closed circles? Open. Okay, and how do we write this in interval notation? Negative infinity to negative 6, 6 to infinity. Good. Any questions here on number 1 or number 2? I'll give you guys a second to write that down. Okay, are y'all ready to move on? Yes, sir. No, because it's just a greater than or a less than. There's equal to is not there. Do you see? You see how this one has an equal to, and this one does not. Okay. Let's do an example like number. You think 6 is easy? Should I go to a harder one? Harder one? Okay. Let's look at number 9. Now, we can't break up into two inequalities until our absolute value is absolutely by itself. Does that make sense? That means we don't want anything outside of the absolute value. So in number 9, Abby, what do I need to get rid of first? The 10. Good. I'm just going to add 10 to both sides. Do not try to break this up before you get it by itself, okay? That's probably one of the most common errors students make, is they try to just break it up from the beginning, and we can't do that. We've got to get the absolute value absolutely by itself, okay? So we add 10 to both sides, and that leaves us with 9 times the absolute value of m minus 8 is less than 36. And then what do we do to both sides now? Divide by 9, divide by 9. And that leaves us with the absolute value of m minus 8 is less than 4. Now that we have the absolute value by itself, we can break it up into two inequalities, right? The first one being m minus 8 is less than 4, and the second one being m minus 8 is greater than negative 4. Good. When we solve, we get m is less than 12, and m is greater than 4. Any questions? Let's graph this. Is this an and or an or inequality? Or? And? Which one? It is one of the two. Okay, it's and because it's less than. Do you remember and? Less than? So we have 4, 12, open, open, excuse me, shade, and then interval notation, 4 to 12. Any questions? Yes, sir. I'm giving you guys kind of an easier way to know where to shade. Like you can look here and say, where is m less than 12 and greater than 4? And that's only in the middle, right here. But if you look at it, you see less than, that's another way to check it. So let's say you ended up graphing it and they were going the opposite ways, but you were like, that's less than. I must have done something wrong somewhere. Okay? Good question. Any other questions on this problem? We're good? You sure? Okay, do we need to do one with a fraction? You want to do 11 or do you want to do 12? Okay, on 12, can I go ahead and break this up into two inequalities? Yes or no? No. Why not? You have to get that absolute value by itself. Did you hear that, DeMarcus? So that would be absolute value of y plus 2 over 3 is less than 3. Okay? And do we break it up now? All right. Can we break it up now? Yes. So y plus 2 divided by 3 is less than 3. And the other one would be y plus 2 divided by 3 is greater than negative 3. Is that cool with y'all? And then you would just solve from there. Multiply by 3 and then subtract the 2 and graph it. Can you, are we good with that? On number 11, you'd have to multiply by 2 before you break it up though, right? Yes? Okay. All right, so let's continue. All right, let's talk about some special cases. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. On number 14, can you guys think of a number that's, it says x plus 2 is greater than negative 4, right? Okay, so who can think of a number that will make this true? We're just guessing here. Who can think of a number for x that will make this true? 10, okay? 10, so 10 plus 2 is 12. Absolute value of 12 is 12, and 12 is greater than 4? Good, okay. Who's next? 0. 0 plus 2 is 2, and absolute value of 2 is, okay, that works. Anybody else?
It's all numbers.
What do you mean?
It's like all the numbers.
All the numbers, even the negative ones?
No, because doesn't it make it like positive in the thing?
What do y'all think? Joel? Can you think of a number that this would not work for? I was hoping I'd get it right down at least like 10 numbers before you guys started thinking of that, because I just thought it would be funny and annoying. No, okay. He's right though, but I want y'all to be able to see that too. And if you need a minute to look here and just plug numbers in, if we plugged in negative 100, right, then that would give us negative 99. We would slap those absolute value bars down over that negative 99, and that would give us what? Well, positive 98, because I can add. It's actually 98. If that were negative 100 plus 2, be positive 98, which is greater than negative 4, right? Okay, so long story short, once you get that absolute value by itself, it's always going to be greater than a negative number. Doesn't matter what that negative number is. If this were negative 0.5, it wouldn't be any different. The answer would be all real numbers. We'd shade the entire number line, and to write our answer in interval notation, it would just be what? Good, negative infinity to infinity. Any questions? All right, I don't want you to shout this out, okay? So please do not shout it out. But when you can figure out a number that you can plug in for x for number 15 that will make this true, raise your hand. Please do not shout it out. Raise your hand if you can think of a number that you can plug in for x and number 15 to make this true. Don't shout it out, just raise your hand. Do I need to start bribing you with candy? For a piece of candy, raise your hand if you can tell me a number that you can plug in for x and number 15 that will make this true. Joseph. 0. If we plug in 0, that'll give us 0 minus 5 is negative 5. But what's the absolute value of negative 5? 5. So that's not going to be less than or equal to negative 2. Good try, though. That was good. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. That was mean. That was ugly of me to trick you, wasn't it? She's absolutely right. I'm sorry, Joseph. I apologize. But I wanted y'all to try. If I didn't, if you didn't try, you would never see that nothing's going to work, right? Okay? Did you try some numbers and nothing worked, right? Because we can't plug in anything here. The absolute value makes it positive. So that means it's never going to be less than a negative number, right? And if it makes it positive, it's not going to be equal to a negative number. So in this situation, guess what our answer is? No solution. Okay? Joseph, I'll still give you a piece of candy, though. I don't have any, but remind me. He was a good sport. Oh, okay, you too, because you did get the right answer. I'm sorry, Emma Kate. Okay, wait, did y'all need me to leave that up there for a second? And you guys, I kind of generalize this in these special cases. Anything is going to be greater than the absolute value of anything is going to be greater than a negative number, so that's why it's all real numbers. And it's never going to be less than a negative, so that's why it's no solution. However, let's look at number 18. On number 18, are you thinking this is like and inequality? Yes, but we can't make that call yet. And do you know why, Pate? Right, we've got to get the absolute value by itself first. So we have to divide both sides by negative 3. And once we do that, we get the absolute value of x plus 2 is, what do we do with that inequality symbol? Right, we flip it so it becomes greater than negative 2. All right, now at this point, do we still, it almost looks like an or inequality, but it's not. And how do we know that it's not? How do we know that it's not an or inequality? Because there's a negative, right? And if there's a negative on, it's going to be one of your special cases, right? If the absolute value is by itself, and then you have a negative on the other side, it's either no solution or all real numbers. And which one is it? Are we sure? Think about it. Try plugging in something. Take a number, and if it works, it's all real numbers. If it doesn't work, it's no solution. Because it's either all the numbers work or none of the numbers work. What did you decide, DeMarcus? All real numbers, okay? Do you guys agree with DeMarcus? Okay, which means negative infinity to infinity. And we're just going to shade that whole number line. Okay, let's look at, that's a bad shading, but Let's look at 19. All right, on 19, are we ready to break that up into two inequalities or no? No? Why not? We got to get rid of that negative 3. And how do we get rid of that negative 3? Divide both sides by negative 3. And that leaves us with the absolute value of x plus 2 is, what happens to inequality? Flip, I heard somebody say flip that sign. All right, so is this going to be a special case? Okay, and is our special case, is it going to be all real numbers or no solution? No solution. How do you know? It's a less than, right? And this will never be less than a negative, so it's no solution. Could I? I would always recommend, especially on a test, for you to show your work so that there's no question. And when you show your work, it might help you. Because let's say you look at it and you see a negative, you might forget that when you divide by that negative, you have to switch your inequality symbol and it changes everything. Okay? Also, can I show you another example that might trick you? Okay. If you look at example, let's look at 23. So this might be one of those examples where, DeMarcus, you look at this and you see that negative right there on number 23. You see it? You see the negative, and you might say, oh, this is going to be a special case. I don't even feel like working out anything. But it might look like it, but not actually be, because the absolute value is not by itself yet. And when we add 6 to both sides, we see that this is the absolute value of v plus 5 is less than a positive 1. So that once special case scenario in our head is no longer actually a special case scenario, is it? And we would solve this from here, correct? All right, you have 7 minutes left in class. I'm going to let you guys just work on your own. Take your time. You can check your answers over here on the board. I don't think I have all the answers, but there are quite a few. So just as you're working, check your answers. And if you have any questions, raise your hand. Again, the homework is the front and back of this. And just a little heads up, your next test is scheduled for Thursday, August the 24th, which is a week from today. And that's not set in stone. It may be the 25th, but I wouldn't think it would push back any further than that.